Perfect. Well, welcome everyone. Again, I'm Lauren Stewart, Director of Equity and Diversity at Browning, and I'll be your moderator this evening. But it is such a pleasure to introduce this group to the broader Browning community. And again, we thank you for joining us. To give you a sense of what to expect this evening, we will start with a few words from our head of school, Dr. John Botti. We'll introduce the panelists in our group, the Panther Mentors, and then dive into conversation. If time permits, we'll open the floor for questions, and we'll give priority to our students who are attending this event. And if we have time, we'll open the floor for our other guests. But these gentlemen came together not only to support our students, but to partner with the school in its evolution, especially as we seek to grow stronger in our sense of community, redefine what belonging looks like at Browning and in our independent schools in general, but also growing more equitable in our practice at Browning. They came together as part of an initial collection of conversations that will serve as a roadmap toward more equitable practice within our community and institutional change. So I've had the pleasure of joining these men that you'll meet today in their work as they've addressed and embraced many of our constituency groups within our community. And we've built a small team as an administration to support their ideas and get them off the ground. So in a year of sweeping change, and as 2020 shows us that we need to evolve in order to move forward, the time, energy, and thought partnership that this group has shared with us, that the Panther Mentors have shared with us, are precisely what the community needs and gifts to the community as a whole. So their ideas and advisory over the last semester have been incredible and have had a significant impact on many within our internal community and current community already. So I'm confident that this conversation will be one that will be lasting. And to get us started, I would like to introduce our head of school, Dr. John Botti, who will join me in this welcome. John, I'll hand it over to you.
Ms. Stewart, thank you so much. And let me thank everybody just for joining us tonight. I want to wish you a happy holidays and also you safety and health, particularly if you're in a place where the snow is falling. It's an interesting time of the year. And it's, as Lauren referenced, it's been a year in which we've all lived through a lot. But I'd like to ask you to think back to the end of May. George Floyd was killed while in the custody of police, and this catalyzed spontaneous demonstrations throughout our nation. These demonstrations asserted the truth, which has too often been denied, that Black lives matter, and that for so many, those lives are clearly treated like they don't matter. And this began what was often called a racial reckoning for our nation, and whatever we think about our nation's ability to sustain that movement, the summer became highly charged for so many independent schools too, as the Black At movement emerged throughout the city. These movements testified to the inequities that so many Black students and Black faculty and Black staffers have felt and continue to feel in our schools, even in communities that thought they had really committed to diversity and inclusion. At Browning, we didn't have a Black At Instagram page or Twitter account open up, but none of us here took that as evidence that we were somehow immune from the mistakes made and hurt caused that we saw in other communities. We love our school, but real love involves understanding who we are, not simply who we wish to be. And so we determined to reach out to the Black alumni of Browning to see if they'd be willing to share their stories in the hopes that we could learn from their experiences. In June, we held some focus groups to get the testimony of these alums, and the alums in turn found a conversation that they wanted to deepen and extend together. From what I understood, they decided that they didn't want to pursue a public articulation of their concerns and hopes, although that certainly would have been understandable. Instead, they wanted to see if they could work through the school itself to affect change. And thus was born a group which called itself We, the Panther Mentors. The mentors came together and worked to develop a list of asks for Browning, a catalog of recommendations, suggestions, and hopes around how our school supports its young men of color, how we approach hiring and governance, how we can use curriculum to promote inclusion and aspiration, and perhaps most importantly, how these alums could serve as mentors for our students, particularly Black young men who might be having experiences similar to those our alums have had. Around the same time this summer, Our senior admin team and the president of our board, Valda Witt, met with the mentors to discuss the focus groups, the list of asks, and what our relationship would be going forward. That meeting, which ran about 3 hours, was among the most important professional conversations I've ever had. And it started an ongoing discussion that has been persistent to this day under the helpful and careful stewardship of Lawrence Stewart, of Caroline Axelrod, Jan Abernathy, Bobby Mark, and now Jenna Montemayor. And all of this is what brings us here tonight. If Browning is going to have a mission that leans on values like dignity, and curiosity, and compassion, we have to nurture in our community members a habit of self-awareness about their own identities and their own cultural memberships. And also, without fail, a disposition to empathize with the lived experiences and beliefs reported by others. All right, simply put, we have to seek and believe each other's stories. We can't do this without representation. We can't do this without narratives and models that all of our students can access. You know, at Browning, more than 40% of our students identify as young men of color. And our curriculum continues to evolve to give our guys the windows and mirrors that they need and that they deserve. But we also need to give our students representative adult models, and in our teaching faculty in particular. This isn't to say that only Black folk can connect with Black folk or brown folk with brown folk and so on, but it is to acknowledge that affinity can be a vital part of relationships. And our students learn through these same relationships. So we'll continue to work to build a faculty and staff that more fully reflects the diversity of our student body. But as we do, we need to give boys a presence that helps them to aspire and endure and find meaning. In the Panther Mentors, we have a group that has volunteered its time to be that presence for our young men of color. Now, eventually, we want to broaden this program to include multiple identity groups as mentors and to give all our boys a chance to learn from these men. As we know, one of the key benefits of diversity is that we all profit from encounter with stories that aren't our own. But as a starting point, we want to use the wisdom and courage of these men to help the boys in our school whose experience may not be fully seen, heard, or understood. Right, this will help our school in all kinds of ways, in supporting young men of color, certainly, but also in broadening the perspective of all Browning students and in helping all of us deliver on our mission to produce curious and respectful and compassionate men who can contribute meaningfully to our world. So thanks for coming to our panel. I'm really excited. I hope you are too. Please let me hand it back to Lauren. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. And let's get started. I'd love to jump in and have our panelists introduce themselves. Gentlemen, if you could share your name and your graduating year and your professions as you see fit. We can start with
Want me to start, the old guy?
Dennis. Yes, that's great. Please.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be here, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy lives to actually join us in this conversation in awareness of what's going on. I'm Dennis Coleman. I graduated from Browning in 1972, and it's good to see Sandy Pels, who I refer to as Sandy and not Mr. Pels. And the burning question I know some of you as students want to know, yes, I learned English with Mr. Ingrasani. I went on to go to school at a small private university out here in California. Loved it so much, I really did not go back. I studied business administration, wound up in local government finance, working for cities and special districts. And then in 2017, I retired. I'm active. I got elected to my local sanitation district and working with things. And so that's who I am and wound up being, and still here with this great group. Thank you.
My name is Graig Springer. I started at Browning in 1985 and graduated in 1998. So I'm a lifer. I graduated from Columbia University in 2002 and Fordham Law School in 2012. I work for Brookfield Asset Management in their legal and regulatory group.
Good evening, everyone. My name is samoralegros, class of 2003. I graduated from Vanderbilt University in 2007. Graduated from Southern University Law Center in 2015. Happy to see so many familiar faces. I'm glad to see my sister here and also the Browning community, a number of my brothers, faculty, allies, and people who worked with us, and we were able to get some brilliant minds together to work towards progress and problem solving.
Hello, everybody. Nathaniel Garcia here, class of 2006. I came to Browning in the 7th grade by virtue of the Prep for Prep program, which would be the year 2000 or Y2K for those of us that were around back then. It seems a lot farther ago than like just yesterday. Anyway, I graduated with a degree in biology from Manhattan College. I am currently a vaccine scientist working at Pfizer in the clinical and diagnostic assay development group. And most recently, I had the honor of, thank you for the hands of applause, guys. Truly humble of working on their COVID vaccine, and very, very proud of that work. Thank you guys so much for joining. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right.
How's it going, folks? My name is Dylan Smith. I entered right when Nate was leaving in Browning in 2006, class of 2011. I attended RIT, where I graduated with a degree in electrical engineering technology. I work for an embedded systems firm here, and I'm really excited to talk to you folks today.
Perfect. And we thank you for all of your contributions, especially your time this evening, and being here, being present for us. So thank you. I'd love to learn more, and I know we would all like to know just why your families chose Browning for you. If you remember those initial conversations, what stands out about your experience at Browning, and how did it shape the person you would later become?
I attended way back in 1970 and recognizing my parents were heavy on education in terms of it. Like to say I was the first that graduated college, but then again, my mother graduated afterwards and actually got her master's degrees in her 50s. My father was pushing too. He got a hold of me to go test at this school because the curriculum and the academic environment was much more competitive. I had transferred and came in from high school where I attended DeWitt Clinton. And for those of you who are familiar, it was back when it was an all-boys school. So it was way back. But it took me out of an environment. It put me into one that was much stronger academic. And with my classmates, it was one that pushed me a lot harder in terms of focusing to going to college and getting out. For me, the experience was a little bit harder because, quite frankly, in the public school system, I was cruising. I was a star. And then when I got to Browning, I had to learn to keep up. I actually skipped 8th grade through a curriculum that they had where we did 3 years of curriculum in 2 years. So it was a shock for me for two reasons. One, in an environment with extremely gifted classmates, teachers, and stuff. And two, it was a different economic environment because I myself came from the Castle Hill Projects, and a lot of you might not have known Castle Hill Projects was actually predominantly white when I was growing up until we had income restrictions. So it really prepared me to get to a different world and how to actually interact in a different environment from an economic standpoint and from an academic. Thanks.
So my story is pretty interesting. I ended up at Browning as a result of discrimination. So I went to a Catholic school in Harlem and did pre-K there. And I told my mom one day that, only the light-skinned kids are allowed to play on the computers while the dark-skinned kids, had to play with blocks and Legos. And, just to give you an understanding of light skin, dark skin, so if you look like Steph Curry or Chris Brown, you're on the computer. If you look like Denzel Washington or Michael Jordan, you're playing with Lego blocks. And so, I told my mom this and she was like, no way, I don't believe you. And just so happened that one day she decided to go to the school early. And what I told her was the case. And so she spoke to the nuns and she gave them the business. And she said that, I'm appalled that, you're discriminating against my son and other kids of his complexion. And she said that this is going to be the last year that he attends this school. So she put in an application for me to go to another Catholic school because that was the track that I was going to be on. And the nuns were late in sending my application, and they're part of the application to that school. And so there was an issue in terms of meeting that deadline. And as a result, it was a little bit of a bind. There was no school, that would take me because it was too late. And it just so happened that a family member who attended Browning, and his name is Graig Springer. And, she reached out and was just like, hey, what school do you go to? And, said it was Browning. So she said, okay. So she reached out to Browning and she said, I really want my son to attend this school. And they told her, like, you missed the deadline. And she said, I know I did, but, we were just thinking that, Graig is related to Graig Springer, that hopefully, there's something that can be done. And, they said, Graig Springer. It's like, oh, we love Graig. Bring him on in. And so, I tested and, started at the school. So, I'm just very fortunate. And it just seems like, fate just, led me to the school. And, what stands out to me about Browning is, the education and the friendship. From an education standpoint, I had great teachers, who were really careful and, thoughtful when it comes to teaching and preparing kids. And, there's a great curriculum as well. And then from a friendship perspective, there's something to say about, saying I've been friends with someone since I was 5 years old. And, there's a brotherhood that's formed and, it's truly special. And, these guys that I've known for so long, we celebrate together, we mourn together, and something that's truly, truly special. And in terms of, the person I am today, at my core, I'm always going to be a Browning gentleman, so no matter where I go to school, or where I work, that is just, they're just bells and whistles, but who I am is, a person who's thoughtful, a person who's caring, and then a person who wants to, affect meaningful and purposeful change.
Hi, everyone. Samoralegros. Prior to heading to Browning, I attended PS 84 in kindergarten, and I tested out of the school because of just being at a different reading level. And I remember a professor, Miss Corcula, said, you should go to another school. And I went to the Alexander Robertson School up until the 6th grade. And at 7th grade is really where parents usually make the decision about college preparatory schools. And when I visited Browning, it was a smaller setting, smaller classrooms, and I was able to meet people that I remember from the first day. Gene Prentice and Jeremy Garrettson are guys who I remember touring the school with. And additionally, while being there, you become a member of the community. I played soccer. I was on the first part of the first a cappella group. I wrote for the Grit. I participated in French activities, plays, traveled with POCC, or People of Color Conference. I was president of the Multicultural Club, and I was very involved with Browning. So when I graduated too, I also had the opportunity to work with an attorney who was the father, God rest his soul, Michael Lasher, who became a mentor to me in a legal capacity. So at 19, 18, 19, I'm working at law firms and really getting a taste for a different world and a serious rigor and discipline that really structured my trajectory in not only going to law school and working at personal injury law firms, international law firms, but also expanding that scope and now working as a compliance analyst in fintech, and being able to learn about digital assets and just opening up my scope. And I have to think and thank the malleability of just being in a healthy environment. And yes, people have trials and tribulations, but when I think back to the problems in public schools And, I listen to community board hearings where I think about the difficulties in education. So this brought an opportunity for us to unite and also provide help. E pluribus unus is one of our sayings, and this was our time to help the community.
Awesome. Thank you, Samar. I think by the time I was in 5th or 6th grade, I had established myself as the resident smart 3-letter word that my dad often referred to me. We'll say guy, smart guy of the household. And as a result, I would often, whenever tasked with a chore or whatever the case, figure out a way to explain why it wasn't a good idea for me to do this, but instead to play video games and or have a second helping of ice cream, you name it. I was there to reason my way into a good time, right? My parents, for that reason, allowed me to make the decision on where I would be attending private school. To that date, I hadn't had any input whatsoever in my education. I'd been forced through prep for prep, kicking and screaming. And when it came time to it, my parents had put the list together of schools that they wanted me to visit, and Browning wasn't on it. But I had known somebody that was attending Browning, and he was a good time. So I make sure we add this school. Mom, we have to visit this school. And we went to an entire slew of independent schools in the city. Some in Westchester with expansive campuses that were extremely well manicured that my mother obviously loved. Oh, think about all the fresh air. You could do your studying underneath that tree over there. And then we'd go to some of the more closely competitive schools in the neighborhood in Manhattan. And my dad would fall in love with the size of their gym. And we bumped into Patrick Ewing's son in the elevator. How could you not want to go to school here, right? Yeah, because if I go to school here, I'll never make the basketball team, Dad. And so it came time to visit Browning, and the very first face I saw when I walked in the door was the same guy that I said was a good time. His name is Christian Hayden, if you guys have ever had the pleasure of knowing him. And he was singing some R&B song, I can't remember, at the top of his lungs in the middle of the staircase. And I was like, oh, this is gonna be a good day. Later on that day, I had Ruby's barbecue chicken, and the deal was done. I had gone home and I professed to my parents over dinner, probably shortly after correcting my father's grammar, where he would call me smart guy once again, that I'm going to Browning, guys. And thank you for, taking me to all those other schools, but this is my decision and this is where we're gonna go, okay? And my mother, befuddled, would ask, why Browning? And my answer, quite frankly, was I liked the way it felt there. And that's what stands out to me about my time at Browning. The way I felt moving through those hallways, being one of the guys, one in the brotherhood, feeling safe and invited and cared for and supported. That sense of comfort and security and the access that inherently comes with attending a top tier independent school allowed me to explore many interests that I didn't even know I had at the time. And whilst exploring these many interests, varsity sports, plays, public speaking contests, affinity groups, even the a cappella group, I would come to learn all of those lessons that, you have to learn in order to grow up. Humility and victory, be gracious in defeat, be respectful, carry yourself with integrity, and above all else, you got to have some grit in order to make it in this world. That's what I remember about Browning and my time there.
So the story of how I ended up at Browning is really a story of truly getting out of your comfort zone. I remember I went to school in the Bronx in the 5th grade. My principal at the time, he looked at me and he said, "You don't belong here." I was towards the top of my class over there, and there were not that many schools within my area that really had the sort of programs that I would have wanted or the level of rigor that my father, being an assistant principal, would have really approved of. So he recommended me for the Prep for Prep program, much like Nate went through, and also much like Nate went through, I went through kicking and screaming. There went 2 summers. There went, Wednesdays and Sundays and Saturdays, excuse me. And when it came time for touring schools, I went to go see, Collegiate, Allen Stevenson, this, that, and the other. But Browning really kind of stuck out for me and my family. Something that my father, being an assistant principal, something that stuck out to him was just the level of care and attention each one of the teachers had with the students. And then something that stuck out to my mom was how happy the kids were being there. I mean, like, how many kids do you see that are happy, like, to be in school? And then how many of those kids are also wearing a tie at the same time? So that kind of sold it for us there. It was just a really good fit for me and my family. And I was a little unsure at first because I had been used to co-ed schools my entire life. I'm like, all right, going to an all-guys school, I've never done that before. Going into Manhattan, I lived in the Bronx all my life, but it forced me to get out of my comfort zone. And the kids that I went to school with pushed me even further. They said, hey man, do it, you won't, try out for a cappella. Hey man, do it, you won't, try out for the fencing club. And a whole bunch of other things. I did so many different activities that I would never had the opportunity to do if I stayed within, the couple blocks of my house back in the Bronx. So Browning really forced me to get out of my comfort zone and be comfortable being uncomfortable.
I'm sure that all of your stories resonate with so many in this room right now and who will be watching this later. Thank you. Your stories are honored, and really I'm grateful that you've shared them. And many of them touched on what is part of our mission, which is purpose. And if you could share just a tidbit of an element of your experience, as some of you have, that contributed to your sense of purpose. And Greg, you spoke to it so beautifully. How did your experience at Browning define that?
Sure. So I am truly passionate about education. And a lot of it has to do with my mother. She's a retired public school teacher. But another big portion is actually the teachers I had at Browning. So when I actually started at Browning, I had a speech impediment. And within 3 months of being at Browning, that speech impediment went away. Another thing that really stands out to me was when I was in the 10th grade and I was taking chemistry. And at the time, in the beginning of the semester, I was running around like a C+. And my teacher at the time, Miss Nagel, she went up to me. She's like, Greg, I know you're smart, but you're struggling. If you come after school, I'll work with you. And we worked together, and I ended up getting an A- in that class. And I was just shocked. I was like, wow, it's just amazing how you can take someone who knows practically nothing and you're able to instill in them knowledge such that, they're able to, thrive and do well. And as a result, I always thought about, wow, that'd be amazing if I can do that, for others. So, while I was at Browning, I would work with the kindergarten class and, help out with the boys. During the summers, I was a camp counselor and worked with kids in terms of helping them learn math, reading, English. And, when I think back on my career, a lot of people would say, you're not doing anything when it comes to education. And I'd say, that's actually not the case. As a lawyer at a financial institution, a lot of what I do is advise. I sit down with people and teams and I educate them. I make sure that they understand what the rules and regulations are. I train people. And, getting that background from my teachers at Browning, understanding what is going to make something stick, is something that I'm truly grateful for and really gave me my purpose in life.
Thank you.
A few things that stuck out that brought me to this sense of purpose. If anybody knows the school song, there's a part where we discuss and sing that friends give us courage through the darkest hours. And again, when I think back to why we're here and why we came together, uh, at Browning, I had to use all of my senses in order to really maintain myself and maintain progress. The rigor between, keeping up with the faculty, administration, and my coaches created a level of discipline, a lifestyle of being an early bird, of, trying to use the hours in the day as meticulously as possible. Also, traveling to different environments, identifying different locations and different strengths. Um, Being able to work with someone like Miss Gruen, who's no longer at the school, but she helped me overcome, public speaking and a fear of public speaking, and practicing and working with her. And also just thinking back to other professors who I was able to learn from, Mr. Cook, who was my first Black professor for anatomy and physiology. And there's so much that I learned in and outside of the classroom, on the basketball court, or even in the library. And being able to get to know the community, and not only being a older brother at home, but also bringing that camaraderie to the school, especially with my soccer buddies. There was a tight knit, close group of people that stuck together. So in thick and thin, you have to come and again deliver with the seriousness of purpose, which was a motto from Southern University. So that worked congruently when it was time for a call to action this year with the Browning School.
For me, when I think about it, it's about the access. It's about the ability to explore those avenues, right? And to figure out what your strengths are, to figure out what you're interested in. I was fortunate enough to go to a school that I had Midtown Manhattan at my fingertips and at my disposal. A two-edged sword. It's very easy to feel small as an 11-year-old mixed race boy from the Bronx in an environment like that. And sometimes I did feel exactly that, small, especially in my early years at Browning. I can recall being the quiet one that played the background as often as I could. I was the guy at the school dances that was glued to the wall as if I was a critical part of the building's structural integrity. And if I moved from here, this whole place is coming down with me. Okay. All right. But at Browning, there was always that consistent encouragement, right? To try those new things and to exist outside of your comfort zone, as Dylan mentioned. And that was always present. There was that persistent nudge to see your commitments as extensions of yourself and as a piece of your legacy. To not just contribute, but to do your best to contribute meaningfully. And you're beat with these, and I say beat kindly, you're beaten with these ideals daily. You're bombarded with them, that everyone around you is bound to be successful in some way, shape, or form. By my senior year, I would come to be an executive member of that same diversity committee that I stood out on the outskirts of. And that role would allow me to host a multitude of interschool functions, including conferences, where I'd facilitate those conversations about social injustices with my peers, often to be quickly followed by intense dance battling late into the evening. And then we would obviously direct those funds generated by these events to the organizations that were charged with meeting them head on. Here is where I found my love for leadership, in those hallways, in those classrooms where I was allowed to speak and be an individual. And so for as many times as I felt small, there was always something behind me saying, it's all right. You have a space to speak and be yourself here. And we're gonna love you regardless, Nat. So do what you can.
That's so powerful. Thank you all. And as we transition to telling us more about the Panther Mentors, so much of what you named seems central to your intentions and to the action you've taken in building this program. So please tell us a little more about the Panther Mentors, not just the program, but how you came together, what you've been working on, and what you hope to accomplish in the name of the legacy that you so graciously mentioned.
Let's see, now I can get started on that. So something I initially thought when I got that initial email from Browning was skepticism, honestly. I thought of it as a way for the school to get ahead of a black ad account at Browning. And I thought about it for the better part of my day working in my lab. And I said, you know what? I want to know what this is all about. So logged on for the session, and I saw that there were people from 1972, Dennis. And then I saw some familiar faces like Nate. And just the energy in that room was, the only way I can describe it is electric. And there was a lot of pain in that room, I'm not gonna lie, of people sharing, stories of stuff that happened back in the day, stuff that happened when I was there, stuff from folks that came after me, and a lot of those stories were the same. And I feel all of those 17 people in that initial meeting felt that we got to do something. That was pretty much what we left with. We all had to do something. Browning gave us all these skills to affect change. We're a family. Why not help out our family? So, meeting with these guys off and on during the weeks since, goodness, was it June? It was, it's honestly been kind of life-changing because I didn't think I'd be doing this. But now that I'm in it, I can't think of anything else that I would rather be doing with my time.
That's awesome. Thank you, Dylan. I think so. We're talking about the meeting that we had there, Dylan, and I think three things at least were abundantly clear when we had that meeting. The first was that we all loved Browning just as much as the next guy, right? And possibly beyond reasonable explanation. We again, there was a lot of pain in that room, but there was so much love that even when discussing those stories, you end up laughing, right? You end up laughing, and well, that doesn't beat my story, and I'll tell you why, right? Especially with guys like Larry Wallace in the room. Again, there were representatives from the 1970s all the way through the 2010s, and the same thing that brings us together is what's disheartening about that, is that all of our stories were strikingly similar. And obviously, the last thing that's painfully apparent is if our stories are the same, then it's really possible, and in all likelihood, the stories of the people that attend the school right now are the same. And there's really no reason for that. There's no reason why we as adults can look back on the trauma and say, all right, well, we made it out, and look at it as a rite of passage, because it shouldn't be that. The only way we could look at each other and with respect and integrity is to do something like we have done now. And Samar, I think you were gonna expand.
Yes, Nate. This really was a team effort. When we got together on the call on June 25th, and I see Ryan here, so thank you for helping to facilitate that. And thank you, Dr. Botti, for organizing that call along with Lauren Stewart. But we were able to connect the dots. It was almost like meeting your long lost family, because as Dennis had observed, it's very rare for all of us to be in the same room, because in most classes of 20 students, you may have 1, 2, at most 3 students of color. So it was nice to see 17 of us. And I think what happened, and Dylan alluded to it, is that there was this kinetic energy that started, and I spoke to Nate about reconnecting. And as we did more research and we saw what was going on, we talked to Dennis, and in no time, Dennis helped us set up a Zoom account. We started reaching out to people and collaborating. We went from a group of 17 to 35 to 50 people communicating via Google Drive. We also developed allies. I see students like Brian McGurk, Peter Allen, who played instrumental roles, who were our white allies. And to see the camaraderie that I had with them in high school, back with the multicultural club and other class organizations, it let me know that this was something that the entire community needed to talk about. And while all these black acts were taking place, we also had to look within and see how much damage was caused during this pandemic. And after seeing what was happening around us, we had an opportunity to say, we could continue in this particular direction, or we can change the course of what we do for ourselves and students who are also in our shoes. When you think about that younger version of yourself and say, what would I want from, a mentor or somebody else who's going to advocate for the school? I saw a call to action for us, and that's when we united and really organized ourselves throughout the summer, helped draft lists of asks, and really talk about some of the substantive um, issues, really getting representation on the trustee level. Greg, congratulations to him, is our representative and board of trustee member. When we start talking about some of the academic changes that we wanted to make so that the narrative was changed, that we got to see more progressive models for not only Black men, but also Black women post 1965. Also incorporating what I learned in constitutional law and learning about the right to life, liberty, and property, and also how certain students should know their constitutional rights without having to feel, harassed when they're outside of the red doors. It's very important for students to also know about financial literacy. And if I could go back and say, this is how you open a checking account, this is how you deal with credit cards, and this is how you plan for your future, I would love to. And there's so much that you learn on the fly that, once you graduate, the world is your oyster. And learning how to navigate is difficult. And again, we had people working in government finance, in law, in medicine, in finance. And, it was a dream team of talent. And to see that opportunity for us to harness our energy for the benefit of our community and try to be role models and help was an opportunity that we all stepped up and rose to the occasion for.
Yeah, and thank you again, because I have to tell you, at first when I reached out, I was curious and responded to Caroline that yes, I was going to do it. And then I got a little bit of cold feet, and Caroline reached out to me. And when she did, I saw how important this was of a conversation. And being that there were many different periods that we had seen of racial unrest, for me going back, the Watts riot, and then what happened with Rodney King sparked conversation. What happened with OJ sparked conversation as well. And the hope was this wasn't just going to spark the conversation, but this was a time perhaps with George Floyd, because I guess it's horrific when you actually see somebody's life being taken right in front of your eyes, and all of a sudden it's like, okay. So when we first had the discussion and we had it amongst ourselves, it was emotional for us too, in a lot of different ways. For me, it was frustrating because I saw some of the things that I'd gone through, that even some of the younger students, because we had Zach Brown on the call too, class of 20, yes, proud of him as well. Kevin Barbosa giving experience and helping to shape the document that we were going to put together. But at the same time, I gotta tell you, this old gentleman here is just, without being patronizing, and I say this to you guys many times, and I wanna reach out to Kevin again, and Zach that's not on the call, I am so proud to see you guys, and it just, without tearing up, to see the young men that came behind me and the input and the influence from Browning, how it shaped you guys. And Larry Wallace, who we brought in from the class of 74, a successful attorney, and I think he was a prosecutor as well. But as he always says, you guys are much better looking, you're brighter, you're going to accomplish a lot. And I always push you guys, and I'll push you students that are on this call as well, because our expectations for you exceed what we've done. Side note, a little joke between us on the 70s. We didn't see any fellow classmates of color until the 90s, and we were worried that we might have broke things for a while, and it took a while for people to recover to get the experiences that we gave. But with the talent that we had and the diversity that Samar just told you, we also were lucky enough to have an educator amongst us, a couple of educators. So when it was time after we met with Browning and we expressed both what we've gone through, which we're not going to go into because we wanted to keep it within the family and discuss it because, you know, it's a twofold thing. We've gone through stuff, but our hearts were there as well. And we're proud, you know, that we were of Browning. And even out here in California, I had a chance at a conference I spoke at on bonds and stuff to talk to somebody who was from New York who was trying to get her son into a school. And she was talking about, you know, the independent schools. And I said, yeah, I understand what you're talking about. And I looked at her and I said, I graduated from Browning. And she was kind of surprised. And you went to Browning? Yes, I went to Browning. You know, we got together on our own to put together some things because with the opportunity, we would have been practicing malpractice had we not put together a list of asks. And, you know, COVID, we had to stay home with COVID. The expression is go home, go big or go home. And we went big, but we weren't surprised as much because we had the chance to look at Browning through the website and saw the fantastic EDI page, Lauren, that you had, and reading John Botti's blog in terms of the things that he expressed. And one of the things that really stuck with me was when he had talked about George Floyd and said, for those of you who are surprised and those of you who aren't, really touched my heart to say, yes, he gets it. So we put together the list. We grew as a group because we explored a lot of things about keeping going outside with structures that perhaps we'd form our own nonprofits, which we let go of because the more and more we got together with Browning, the more and more we saw ourselves working as a team. We kept working, we've had plenty of meetings with Lauren, Caroline, Jan. We've had meetings with Sumi Thompson and Bobby Marks and others, and just got introduced to Jana, and we keep moving along. We are starting to form our partnership and understanding our boundaries, you know, in terms of trying to get these things done. So we're accomplishing some of it, but it's just the beginning as we're working. And one of the things this has done for us as well, it's brought us, the students that you're looking at, as part of the infrastructure to actually give back, because we're now, some of us are now working with Stewart and Ornstein in the group in terms of the fundraising efforts for this group. So we're being brought back in to the infrastructure to give beyond the purpose that we started. Oh, and a shout out to Ralph out there, seeing him there. He was instrumental in our education platform that we did. So thank you.
And I hope you never forget how deeply supported all of you are. And just the love and support that surrounds all of you is immense and abundant. So please know that we are grateful to you and for you for all that you've shared, including, you know, what started with focus groups hosted by our partners at Pollyanna Incorporated, but also has transpired into weekly and monthly meetings with our team. We are so grateful. And the time and energy, again, that you've shared. And with all of that, we are curious, and we're getting a couple of questions in the chat, but we're also just inching closer to time. But one thing we've discussed in our meetings is the importance of seeing what you can be, and the importance of student mentorship conversations that are among the plethora of projects you've decided and you've very graciously been willing to take on. So can you tell us just a bit more about how the mentorship program will run? And I'm happy to share that as well. And why it was important to pilot this program with upper school students of color.
Thank you for introducing this program. First, we thought that it was important to hear from the students, to hear about what was going on from their perspective, especially with all the current events and news going on around the world. We had to slow down and focus back on the Browning community. The next was also seeing an older version of yourself. And, you know, when I was at Browning, I remember seeing Graig, you know, and he was on his way out, but still seeing somebody let me know that there was an opportunity for me to, you know, succeed. As difficult as it was, I also got to carry on the torch and do the same for some of my other peers. And I remember seeing Nate and other brothers there. You know, Ralph did that for me while I was there, in terms of the succession plan of the multicultural club. And being able to see how the kids are coping with not only COVID-19, but education and being at home and not being able to collaborate made it crucial for us to also develop a group structure. So we will be meeting as groups and speaking to the students. So then there is a safe platform where we're working with the administration and faculty. And also we were introduced to Jenna earlier this week. And as we continue to work with Lauren and other faculty members and Caroline, as we piece together the jigsaw puzzle of all the alumni, we are finding constructive ways to give back to the students, especially the students that had to deal with serious difficulty or hardship. I know it was a tough year for everyone. And being able to have the support of a team of people that you didn't even know existed. And that's why that June 25th conversation was so important. You know, if we didn't have this energy, I think that would have been a one and done call. But I believe that once we saw the amount of resources, you know, I have to give a shout out to my buddy Nate. You know, I'm casually reading the New York Times and reading about the success of Pfizer and saying like, this is a guy I work with, you know, and more people should know about him, you know, Nate as the academic professional. And again, when we saw all of these professionals who had careers, you know, I thought back to myself, you know, in my high school years, what would I have wanted to see? And the void in the gap is somebody who would bridge the gap, you know, in my, I don't know, late teens or early 20s to say, hey, this is a roadmap for life. You don't get a roadmap, and you work through it. And again, in the aftermath of all of these Black ad accounts, we had the option to change the conversation and make it more productive and try to help.
You know, I just wanted to say that having a mentor is just so, you know, critical. And, you know, I think back to my time at Browning, and I didn't know that I really wanted a mentor. And I think back to when I started working at Lehman Brothers, and, you know, I was on the trading floor, and I saw two other people who looked like me on this huge trading floor. And, you know, it was the same thing at Deutsche Bank. And there was something inside of me just yearning for someone to show me the ropes, show me how to navigate, you know, the financial world. And, you know, I had this experience I was walking along Park Avenue, and I don't know what was going on that day, but for whatever reason, I was just thinking about becoming a success within the financial arena. And uh, none of you know this, you're about to find out now, but there are a lot of times that I just love walking on Park Avenue, especially right by Browning. And I don't know, it's just like a sense of being home every time I do that. But, I kept thinking about success and success and success. And I just happened to hit 79th Street and Park Avenue. And Ray McGuire walked out of this town car. And for you who do not know Ray McGuire, he was the head of investment banking at Citigroup. And he's now working for or running for mayor. And so when Ray stepped out of the car, Ray is about my height, it's about 6'3", 6'4". And I looked at him and I was like, that is what I want to be, right? And I said to myself, I don't think I'll ever have an opportunity, to meet this man. And I was like, I don't care if I scare him, but I'm gonna run up on him. And so I approached him and, I told him, I was like, Ray, I work for Citi and I would just love some time to talk to you. And he gave me his card. He said, please call me. And I actually ended up going to his office in the C-suite. And let me tell you, like the way Citi is structured, you have the regular floors, but when you get to the C-suite, it's all white, right? You practically see angels there. And just to have, this conversation, with this man who's seen it all and has done it all, that was life-changing for me. And, to give that opportunity, to students, to help them navigate, let them know that there have been people at Browning who have gone through the same things that they've gone through. That's what this is all about. And, ultimately, of course, we want to open up this program to all students. But it seems like with in the community of students of color, there is a lack of these figures who have, especially within the financial world and the legal world, who can give them that insight. And so this is why we've pinpointed these individuals at Browning to help them out and show them the way.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of Greg, you got to see it to believe it, man. Representation is important. And I don't know about the gentleman that I'm sitting up here with, but my dad couldn't introduce me to any scientists or any surgeons. My mom didn't have a sister or a brother that was well-to-do. The network that I have is one that I've built myself, my professional network. This is something that I believe that shouldn't have taken me 12, 13 years to do, especially coming from a place like Browning, where we're all so tight-knit and so close. There's no reason why I can't afford that to somebody younger than me. To be there in those moments when they're feeling small and to be that voice in the background that says, hey man, you can do it, I did it. And if I can do it, I know you can, because you're a hell of a lot brighter than me, like Dennis likes to say. And that's really what it's about. This is not a giant cure-all for systemic racism. It's really just about being an extra hand, an extra cheering voice, or an extra avenue of support when things aren't going too well. Dylan.
Well, you kind of stole my thunder a little bit to swap out the word scientist for engineer, because yeah, my parents could not introduce me to that many engineers, or hell, black engineers or anything like that. But going to engineering school and being singled out, or just being so visible, you were kind of made known that you were other pretty much at all times. And you kind of realize that you have to be the change that you want to be, that you want to see, excuse me. And there's nothing like being seen. Like when Nate saw me on 62nd Street and pulled me into Browning, my very first day of school, he made me feel seen. And the fact that I'm still talking about that in 2020, when that happened in 2006, and how vivid of a memory that was for me, he made me feel seen and how important that was to me. And I think I can speak for all of us that we want to make every single one of these young men feel like they are seen.
Oh, man, you're going to get me, Dylan. You're going to get me, man.
And I just wanted to add one more thing. And, it's something that we want to implement within Browning, and that's mentoring within the school, and to have the older boys, mentor the younger students. And, it's so weird to me because, of course, while I was in Browning, I looked up to the older boys and I was like, wow, I want to be like him. And when I was older, for whatever reason, I never thought that anyone looked up to me. Never, ever thought. And it wasn't until, we had these meetings and, guys were reaching out and saying, hey, Graig, I looked up to you. I was like, oh my God, had I known, if I had known, we could have sat down and just talked about, the school life, everything. And, so things that we missed out while, we were coming up, we just want to make sure that's instilled within the school.
Hi, everybody. I just want to jump in and say that feeling that Graig was aspiring to is part of what helps make schools homes. I've said multiple times that, I really loved my time at Browning, but Browning was never home for me. And I'm hoping that through this mentorship from outside the school and alumni, and then cultivating mentorship within the school between our students, it starts to feel more like a place that we can call home, and that after graduation, it doesn't take me 20 years, 15 years to come back, because it's someplace that I want to come back to. And I think the mentorship that we can provide, that students can provide each other, like Graig was saying, Graig was a legend. Graig, Chris McLeod, ATN Portu, these are men that, like, if I haven't explicitly said it to them, these people were legends to us. Like, they made it through. And if he didn't know that, he should know that, and building that knowledge and that recognition and seeing each other, like Dylan said, within the school will help us make Browning a home.
I can't say enough how grateful we are for this historic first, honestly. This is a first for the school as a whole. It is started by Black men, and we are proud of all of you for that. We are grateful to you for reconnecting, and also for lending a hand, as you say so humbly, but creating a legacy for yourselves and for our current students in the ways that you have and are going to. So we thank you very much for that. We are over time, unfortunately, but I do want to acknowledge how meaningful this conversation has been, and reiterate that the stories you've shared, the stories that you will share with our students, and the stories that our students will share with you are honored in every single way. So we thank you. And I know that this conversation will be long lasting. There will be a ripple effect for years to come, but it will also remain salient forever. So thank you very much to all of you for your time and energy. And to all of our guests this evening, we appreciate you as well. And thank you for joining us. There will be a second space for parents, especially parents interested in the program itself, not just upper school parents, but those who do have questions at another time in the new year. So we will be in touch about that. But more importantly, students who are on the call and who have remained with us this entire hour, we are looking forward to connecting you through monthly group conversations as the program will start and become creative in its expansion and flourish in the ways that will serve you most. So thank you to our panelists, thank you to our team, and thank you to our students. And we appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful evening, happy holidays, and please be in touch. Have a great night.
Thank you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Graig.